Good morning. We'll call the meeting to order. Board of Equalization. Shelley, I think we need to do a roll call.
Gary,
Here.
Pepcorn, Strand,
Here.
Preston, Mahoney.
Here. Kent Costin will start us off.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners, and thank you for getting up bright and early this morning, and thank you to the people that are attending the meeting. Purpose of the meeting today is to brief you on the changes in our tax base and to allow appeals from people that are not happy with the valuation placed on their property. So with that, I wanted to tell you that I'm very pleased with a couple of things. One is we have continued growth in our tax base, as evidenced in the data that you'll see today. And I'm also very pleased with the transition that we've made in leadership in the assessor's office. As you recall, about a year ago, Ben Hushka, the former city assessor, served the city for 44 years, and now Mike Splonskowski has replaced him and is doing a fine job with the leadership in the assessor's office, as are all the members of their team, especially this year dealing with some of the COVID issues that will be discussed in the presentation. We purposely changed this up a little bit, and we tried to do more of a presentation, a discussion style event, and so you'll see the changes in that. And but with that, I'm just really pleased to be living in a city that has such a strong growing economy. I think we're all very fortunate in that regard. So I'll turn it over to Mike, and he'll proceed through the presentation.
Thank you, Kent. Good morning, Commission. I would also like to thank Kent for the opportunity to serve in this capacity, as well as the Board of Commissioners, for giving me the chance as well. It's early this morning, and I hope you all had your coffee, because the presentation that I'm going to give you may not keep you awake. So, welcome to your Board of Equalization. This is three purposes for this meeting: is to do a general review of the real estate market, also an annual review of the assessor's office efforts in regards to that market, and thirdly, and most importantly, to receive value appeals and to approve and certify the values. We will not be doing any actions today, but we will be receiving the appeals. And then at the end of this meeting, I will be requesting a reconvene to handle all of the appeals. State law allows the board to change the value of any property as is reasonable to render taxation uniform and equalize and correct the assessment rule. These are some of the laws that govern the assessment process. All property is subject to taxation unless expressly exempted by statute. We have to place all of the values at true and full value, and we do this as of February 1st of each year. Real property is land, improvements, and structures and buildings, and this refers to the specials, in which we would say the specials are necessary to the property and therefore they have some value. So in the sales ratio study, the specials are included as part of the transaction. They are not included in the valuation itself, but they are included for the sales ratio study that we run against our own numbers. And state law requires that we send an increase to any property that has received an increase of both $3,000 and 10%. So we're not sending a valuation notice to every property every year, just to the ones that meet these two criteria. The law requires that we set the values at true and full value. However, because the market is imperfect and unpredictable, the state allows our sales ratio study to be between 90 and 100%. If our sales ratios does not come into compliance, the state can come in and make increases or decreases to bring the value into compliance. This is usually done by classification, so they may come in and say all of the residential gets a 10% increase, or all of the commercial gets a 20% decrease. So that's why the local assessor is important, because we can analyze and target the areas that are problems and deal with them in a more accurate manner. I'll do a quick review of the sales ratio process. At the time of the sale, we take the assessed, or what we would call true and full value, and divide it by the sale price to get the ratio. So in this data set, the middle ratio, the median ratio, would be 86%, and we would be out of compliance. Through our local efforts, then, we would adjust for what's going on, try to adjust our models to reflect the market more closely, and we would come up with a ratio that is in compliance with what the state is asking us. So some potential challenges to our appraisal process this year especially have two forces that seem to be opposite to each other. As you will see, we have a strong real estate market, as probably part of that is low interest rates that are going on right now. And then with the virus and everything that's going on, what are the influences that they have on the market, and are they present in our market? So here are some of the sales data that we're going to be going over in the next few slides. Again, strong commercial sales. We had 142 commercial sales, which is only slightly less than 2019, and is well within the range of the amount of sales that we've had over the last 7 years. Record sales on the residential side, almost 2,400 residential sales over the last year. And we've had realtors tell us that there's not very much inventory out there. There's not much supply. So again, very strong on that side. Here's the median sale price of a single family home over the last year is $270,000. And that's an increase of about $12,000 from the last year when it was about $258,000. So again, very strong growth in that part of it. And this is that same data for the Fargo line. And this graph is just a representation of our market. It's not a dollar for dollar comparison to the other cities, but just a trend line of what our market has been doing. And what you see is that it's generally an appreciating market with only slight corrections here and there, whereas some of the other markets that you're seeing, they're seeing the large swings.
Mike, could I ask a question about the previous, if you could go back 2 slides? So increase of 12,000 from 2019. Can you give us a sense of how that relates to previous years?
Well, if you look on the graph here, you're seeing that that's a pretty large, increase
Okay.
in general. We did have 3 years where it kind of floated around that same mark. But there's other years where it really did jump. So, as in general, I would say that's probably pretty par for what you're seeing here. It's not the biggest jump we've had, but also it's bigger than other years. So.
Okay, thanks.
So this is the local efforts that this brings us to our what happens with our sales ratio and our reappraisal efforts. Before we did any of our local efforts, our ratio was here in the before 87.6 on the commercial side and 91.9 on the residential side. And so what we did is looked at our sales analysis and made our adjustments. This was our sales ratio prior to local efforts. After making local adjustments to specific problem areas, our ratio is in compliance. We had to make some large increases to commercial properties. Some of the various classifications within the commercial properties needed large increases. And on the residential side, mostly small increases just to keep up with the market. Now, in regards to the challenges of the virus, the main area of concern is on the commercial side with properties like hotels and office space. We decided to be conservative with the increases because we thought that large increases could lead to an overvaluation situation. We will be monitoring this in the upcoming year as well.
Mike, again, I apologize, since I'm new to this. Can you go back to the previous slide? Just a little more explanation. So the after for the state sales ratio, when does that get compiled in relationship to the before figures. I mean, so the before figures are what, from 1 year, and this state sales ratio is from a previous year?
The
How does
state,
that go?
so the before portion of this is basically saying, okay, what are the sales that occurred in 2020 and how do they relate to our values that we had for 2020? And because of the sales that occurred, it turns out that our values were low compared to what the market was doing. So again, strong market. So then what we do is we go through our local efforts. We say, where are the problem areas? Where are the properties that are low? And we increase those based off of the sales that we have. And then we remeasure all of those sales. And we're using the same sales. They have to be good sales. And saying, okay, our new value against the sales price, where is that at? And this is what we come up with.
And the state is using the same sales figures as we are.
Yes, yep. I already sent those sales out to them. Those have to go to the state on March 31st. And they have those already. And then what will happen is, as we go through this process, once we get done with certifying these values, your board will certify the values here in about a month, saying, yep, we're good with what you did. We'll send it to the county, and then they will send it to the state. And they will be looking at all these through their boards of equalization. All right, these are our local efforts that our office has been performing. The main goal of the assessor's office are equalization and uniformity of values, and this is because the more uniform the values are, the better the chances are that the taxation is going to be more fair and more evenly distributed. Our office was restricted, of course, by the virus, by how much of our regular reappraisal efforts that we could do going out to the physical addresses. But what we did is we did maximize our time by performing data cleansing that was much needed and updating, as well as looking at our processes and trying to maximize the efficiency with what we were doing. Some things of note on this is that we increased the value on about 2,300 commercial properties and 11,700 residential properties. This graph shows results of our evaluation efforts. In this graph, the black lines are the state's requirements, and the red line is where our median sales ratio came in after our local efforts. One way to describe the process is that we strive to bring these properties outside the black line to being within the black line. However, our process is called mass appraisal. We're doing broad sweeping strokes with the values to bring them up to compliance. And a perfect system does not exist. We rarely hear from people that are on this low end of the bracket. And for people that are above in this high range, we have the appeals process. That's what that is for. So anyone who thinks that their value is incorrect can come and appeal it, and we'll take a look at it. So we come to our total appraised value of just under $17.4 billion. We have the breakout of the regular values and then the exempt type values. We have the government-owned, which is the schools, and city-owned, those types of properties. The non-discretionary, which is state-mandated, and the discretionary exempt, which is regulated by the commission. And this is a pie graph just showing that same breakout of the prior slide. The projected value for 2021 is $660 million, and that's the taxable value. New growth was 2.2%, 3.8% was existing, for a total increase of about 6% over the last year. This is a historical look at the taxable value over the years, an annual increase of about 5.7% was average. And this is, again, the same numbers from the prior graph, just showing that the strength of the market over the same period. The taxable amount reached $200 million in 2003. It reached $400 million 11 years later in 2014, and $600 million 5 years later in 2019. This slide shows the non-discretionary exemptions and their values changes from the last year. Of note here is the Island Park structure, which went from being privately held to government owned. And then discretionary exemptions. This shows the breakdown of the exemptions and the value changes. Of note here is the Renaissance almost doubling, and that is because of the Block 9 and the City Center lofts coming online. Here's the current TIFs that are in place. Currently makes up about 0.68 of the total tax base. That's down from 1.5% of the total tax base from last year. And that is due to the payoff of some large TIF districts, including the Island Park ramp, the Phelan development, and the industrial park, and Shotwell Commons. And then we just wanted to make some people aware of the legislative tax relief that is out there. We have the Homestead program. This provides reduction in the taxable value for qualifying homeowners. There's about 660 granted throughout the city of Fargo currently. We have the requirements here of income not to exceed 42,000 and assets of 500,000. And it gives a maximum reduction of the taxable value of 5625. In the example below there, we have a house that would be worth 195,000 for a taxable amount of 8,755. So the estimated taxes would be about $2,600. With the homestead credit being applied there of, in this case, of $4,500, the taxes go down to $1,249. And then this is a homestead for special assessment programs, and this reduces the special assessment payments that are due each year. They must qualify for the homestead credit. Again, the income and assets restrictions. It's an annual application to the county, and it's a maximum credit of $6,000, and it creates a lien on property to the state, which would be then paid off when the property is transferred.
Is that 6,000 every year or 6,000 total?
So it's a yearly submission, and so it's my understanding is that it would be 6,000 every year.
Okay.
I did try to verify this with the county, but I wasn't able to get a hold of anybody. It's busy over there this time of year as well. So,
Mike, would you explain the lien aspect of that? So it's really not a credit? It's a lien against your asset?
yes, that's correct. The lien goes to the state, and so anything that the state is paying on that, they would require back when the property is transferred. Anytime it's sold or anything along those lines, I believe they become the first lien holder, and it would have to be, that would have to be satisfied first.
So there's really no net credit to the asset, to property owner.
It's basically just that they're not having to pay that at this time. It will have to be paid off eventually. Yeah.
So then the state is paying the special assessment bill to the city, okay.
Right. And the Disabled Veterans Program, this is very similar to the Homestead, except for it's for disabled vets who have 50% or more disability. And there's about, again, around 600 granted throughout the city of Fargo. Here are the different requirements, and there's no income or asset restrictions. The maximum veterans credit of $6,750, and this can be coupled with the homestead credit. So again, the example down below works very similar to the homestead credit. And the maximum is larger for this one, so you could have an estimated tax bill of $2,600, and it could drop to about $600.
Can you give us a sense of how many are qualifying for each of these programs?
Yep, for the disabled veterans, we have 591 that are granted throughout the city of Fargo.
I'm talking dollar amount.
Oh, dollar amount? I do not have that figure with me. And for anyone who did not receive an increased notice or wants to know how we're valuing their property, they can go to fargoparcels.com and check that out. Most of our data is there. Before we go on to open up the appeals, I'd like to go over the process, what it looks like. When we receive an appeal, an appraisal will first verify the data we have on the property is accurate. Then they analyze the market and any comparable properties. Finally, they'll make a determination either that we can support the value or that we should adjust the value to what is supportable. After this process, if the owner still does not agree with us, they can go to the County Board of Equalization and present their appeal there. And if they're still not satisfied, they can present it to the State Board of Equalization. And just a couple of final points. I'll accept any questions the board has for me, and then we can open up the floor to value appeals. We will not be doing any action again today or certifying the values due to the amount of appeals that we have already and then any that we received today. And I will be requesting a reconvene at the close of this meeting.
So Mike, on page 11, it has Homestead Veterans Credit, and that's the valuation. When Arlette asked the question, it's 120 million. When she asked you what's the value of how many people take that, doesn't that say it's $120 million?
Oh, okay. Let me go back to that slide. Yes. Yep, I do.
So
have
that's the
number.
value.
It's
that people
120
use.
million.
So there's a fair amount of people that utilize that.
Okay.
Yep, that would be for the two programs combined.
And then could you just have your staff stand up so the team can see who your staff is that stands behind you and meets our public?
Yes, please stand. This is the team, and I know I'm biased, but I believe they're probably the best team here in the city of Fargo. So they've done a great job of supporting me as I've come into this, and I'm really proud of the way that we work together and what they do.
And they're not responsible for taxes. They're responsible for getting it right as far as the value of your house. So they're the polite people that go in your house and go through it and help you figure it out. Although sometimes people won't allow our team to come into the house, right? And that's part of the issue we have sometimes.
Yep,
But,
that's correct.
I just want to thank you. You all do a great job. I've heard great reviews when people come back and tell us, you know, they're worried about having you come to the home or be in the house, and I think you all do a great job. So appreciate that very much. And I'm glad you guys enjoy the fact the city's getting bigger every year. And your work is even more every year. And with COVID, I know it's extremely difficult. So I appreciate all your hard work. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Any questions by the commissioners? Is there anybody on the floor that wants to appeal the valuation of their home? If you're not here today or watching it online, you can call the office, and if you want to appeal your value, I notice one is at 135% of the value of the home. I'm sure that person will come in and want to debate that a bit, and we're happy to look at that and see what goes on. Oftentimes, it's difficult for our assessors to get valuation on a home if they can't get in the home, so that's sometimes difficult, and I think that you might expect that in order to do an appeal, be also willing to let us come in the house and take a look about. Do we have any other business, commissioners? Mike, you have any other business? Great presentation. John, did you like it this year?
Well, I do have one question, as long as we have a minute.
Time.
I don't know that I see it in this report, but in previous years, I would easily be able to discern how much of Fargo is in the West Fargo School District. I can see the numbers, but I'm trying, I remember it used to be like 48% of the West Fargo School District is actually in the city of Fargo. And then it would tell us how much of their own school district is in West Fargo. I don't see that clearly in here. Has that changed?
Yes, that was taken out of the report this year. Are you talking about the map that was in there?
Yes.
Just showing that? Yeah, that was taken out this year. So.
I wouldn't mind seeing that again.
Okay.
I think that's really valuable information. And while we're at it, I'm not sure which page it is, but am I seeing it correctly that the West Fargo school district's now a higher millage than Fargo? They're at 299 and we're at 292. I don't know if that's ever happened before.
That is correct, page 14.
A lot of people don't realize that West Fargo School District's growth is actually Fargo's growth. We're the only school district in the state that has jurisdictions in multiple cities. You know, so we hear about the West Fargo School District exploding in growth. A lot of that is actually Fargo's growth. A big chunk of it.
Sure.
Shelley, can you record that part of the meeting and send it to Bernie Dardis, please? So he gets that.
He maybe knows it.
He knows it, but thanks, John. Any other business?
If I might ask one more question, Mayor, as long as, with this last year's pandemic and with the impact especially on commercial properties, what flags or red flags are you getting or warning signals? Are you seeing big box stores? What are you seeing that's concerning you that we need to be aware of?
Excuse me. At this point, we are seeing some of the appeals on big box stores, and we've had some appeals as well from some of the hotels, and we are looking at those right now. And so that's in the works. We have also seen a lodging tax dropping significantly, and we have been tracking that and looking at that. We did a rolling average over the last 3 years just to see what that's looking like for the hotels and motels. And we did do a small reduction on those properties this year. Just there's been some of the other communities around us did larger reductions than we did, and so it just depends on the numbers that you're using. But we did recognize that. But the other thing is that because of the strong sales that we do have, we're being, again, conservative with the changes that we're making, just so that we don't have those big swings back and forth to, try and maintain the stability of the valuation at this point. But again, yeah, those are the things we're looking at. And as we go into the next year, if we keep seeing sales that are coming in well below what our what our values are at this point, then we will do a reduction.
Thank you.
I think Commissioner Strand, part of the problem is interest rates are low, so it sometimes buoys up a high price, which is kind of a difficult thing. Although, if everything was going up, that you would see drop, I think, in prices more so than what we saw.
Well, and could you go back to that comparison of Miami and Fargo and the house value rates, Michael, on page 4? Here's my concern, well, many concerns. When the crash in 08 and 09 hit, Fargo wasn't in the top of a bubble. Now we are. And I'm really concerned about that. The rest of the country crashed, we were stable and didn't really crash the next few years value-wise. Well, now we're not in that position where we're on the bottom, we're on the top. And our valuations, I don't know if it's a bubble or if they're overinflated or if that's just the dollar's not worth anything anymore, but.
This valuation is not right, though, John. So in Las Vegas, a house could be more expensive. It doesn't.
Yeah, it's not a dollar.
It's a graphic that he's trying to show. So it doesn't say his house in Fargo is more expensive than Las Vegas, Minneapolis, and Phoenix.
What's the left axis?
Again, that wasn't included because we don't want to make sure, we want it to be understood that this isn't a dollar for dollar type of.
So what is it,
comparison.
percentage change?
It's basically, it's the single family residential median price, so that, I'll just go one back here.
Our median price didn't drop, others collapsed.
So it's the same line as this, we're just showing what our median price has been over the years, about the last 40 years, and then showing it as it looks here. This is what it's been doing, and this is what that same measure, again, not a dollar for dollar measure, but that the idea of that single family median price in these other cities, what they have been doing along those same lines. So it's again, I'm not going to be able to tell you, what is the dollars per square foot of a house in Miami compared to Fargo. It's just
Change.
No,
it's just a trend.
Except it's very visible, they nosedived after the crash in 08, 09. Ours didn't.
Correct.
Ours stabilized, dropped just a little bit. Now relative to the others, we're above everybody almost except Miami. I'm really concerned about that trend.
John, I'd interpret different. You're seeing higher graphics on the bottom 3. They're going up faster than ours.
And yet we're now.
And even the one with Miami is going up faster than ours. We're more flat than the all 4 graphs on there.
But relative to them back in 08 and 09, we were way below them.
Yep.
Now we're above almost all of them. I'm just really concerned about that trend.
We'll have to maybe, Mike, talk about this graphic later. So I have adjourned, but we have to set the meeting on the 4th or the 11th, or is there a choice that we get to make as a commission?
Yep. I guess at this point, you're thinking the 11th.
That would be
Yeah,
fantastic.
we would like the extra week if we can, just to finish up the appeals. We've got about 131 appeals right now.
So you would come in more completed with your appeals if we do it the 11th?
Correct, yep.
Okay, can I have a motion from the commissioners?
I move that we reconvene on the 11th at 7:30.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote?
Gary.
Yes.
Strand.
Yes.
Preston.
Aye.
Mahoney.
Aye. Is there any other business of the commission? Move to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, we're adjourned. Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Thank you, presentation. Thanks, crew, for coming up this morning. Really, the presentation, very nicely done. Thank you.